Well, hey, folks, welcome back to the United Regional Chambers weekly update. We appreciate you tuning in. We try and bring you some interesting guests and subjects each week through the AACS. Again, a big shout out to Dave Angel, our producer there at AACS, for putting up with me every week. This week, it's my pleasure to bring on Senator Paul Feeney. Senator Feeney is working diligently up at, well, a lot of it is remote right now. But even though all this crazy COVID stuff goes on, our legislators and senators still have to work very, very hard. And Paul is one of the hardest working legislators that we have the pleasure of having in Attleboro. So welcome, Senator Feeney.
Hey, Jack, great to see you. I'm actually in the State House today, so out of the office. So I apologize if we have any Wi-Fi connectivity issues because it's been a little sketchy lately. But yeah, it's good to be in the office and working. It's a busy day up here in the legislature. So good to see you and good to be on.
Well, before we get into the today's subject on the lemon law, tell us just a quick bit with the redistricting. You now cover all of Attleboro. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I think last time we spoke, we were still going through the process and right. Trying to finalize the maps. That has happened. So, we had our once in a 10-year process of redistricting to redraw the House and the Senate maps. My district actually changed fairly significantly compared to years past. I think we've seen some more shifts this year, and a lot of that is due to the population shift that we're seeing across the Commonwealth, but also creating districts of opportunity for people of color and minorities. And when you look further up north into the Boston area and even up into Merrimack Valley, and anytime you change those districts, it has a domino effect. My district, very, very proud to represent the 9 cities and towns of the Bristol and Norfolk as constituted. Unfortunately, I will lose a couple of communities. I'm going to lose Seekonk and Rehoboth, which is going to shift towards the district currently represented by Senator Pacheco, as well as Walpole and Medfield. But because we've had a population shift and we actually have to increase the amount of voters in this district, I pick up the entire community of Attleboro. Right now, there's a few precincts that I don't represent, but as of next year, the entire city of Attleboro, as well as North Attleboro, which I'm very excited about. And then we had Canton as well up in Norfolk County. So, yeah, some changes, but I'm looking forward to getting out there and campaigning. And, of course, this takes effect next January. So, we'll be representing this district as currently constituted for the next 11 months and doing so diligently.
Well, we appreciate all the work that you do for us, Paul, and I can honestly say you're one of the guys that always returns phone calls. I know sometimes myself in my position here, I can be a pain in the neck to some of you legislators, but you always return my phone calls, whether it's good or bad. Yeah. And we always come to some type of mutual agreement, and I appreciate that.
No, and trust me, I appreciate your approach too. I mean, you say you're a pain in the neck, but you're doing your job, and that's, to me, that's sacrosanct. We hear from all sorts of folks and different stakeholders throughout the district, and it's my job to be there and to be responsive and available and accessible. So I appreciate your approach to it, and just having discussions like this, talking about bills that maybe don't always make the radar screen, but actually affect people in our district. And you've shown and you've been a coalition builder and bringing stakeholders together throughout our region, really, for many, many years. How important it is to have these discussions and to be, for me to be accessible, to be able to answer questions when needed. And like you said, it's not always great news, but it's incumbent upon me to be honest and transparent with everything we do. So thank you.
Well, no, we appreciate it here. So today we're going to talk about the new proposals that you have on the lemon law. Even though it has been in effect for, I can't tell you how many years, because I was in the car business 1,000 years ago, and I have some relatives that are in there now. But some of the new bills that are out there, and especially the proposals that you have bringing forth, talk to us. Tell us a little bit about why you're doing this and what are some of the changes that you're trying to enact.
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. We filed a bill early in this session. So right now we're in the second year of our 2-year session. So we filed this bill back in February, a year ago, and we're really just starting to get through the process where it's being considered by committee. Hopefully, we get some good news on it today, and it's actually reported out favorably. But the bill, Jack, was essentially to update and modernize our consumer protection laws when it comes to used car sales or even leases on new cars. we work frequently with others in state government to try and figure out, are there ways legislatively that we can fix problems that they see that need to be addressed. I was the chair last session of the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure. It's a long title for a committee that has a lot of different issues before it. But, we focused intently, and at least, I did in my office, on consumer protection. So we worked closely through a lot of the bills that we were vetting last year as the chair with the Attorney General's office. And one of the things that I've appreciated that our current Attorney General does, and I think she's very cognizant of the fact that we have to respond to these issues that are coming before her office. Her staff and the Attorney General herself approached me early in the session and said, one of the main issues that we deal with in the Consumer Protection Division at the AG's office is around car sales, vehicle sales. People have issues with transactions, something goes wrong, they don't get what they paid for. So they reach out to the Attorney General's office, and it's the number one complaint that they get. I think there were over 3,000 cases last year. So they took a hard look at the statutes that we currently have available and said, is there a way that we can modernize these to offer a little bit, additional protection, and so it makes sense in 2022. So we work with them in drafting it. It was quite a tall lift in going through decades and decades of statutes to try and figure out how we could do it. But we came up with a pretty comprehensive bill, again, with her office and with one of my colleagues over in the House, Representative Gonzalez, that I think, will have the effect of protecting consumers and modernizing laws that haven't been touched in many, many years.
Well, see, your average consumer, doesn't realize the extent of this lemon law. And, they'll battle back and forth with the dealer, the used car salesperson, whoever it might be. But there is an outlet for them, and it is through the Attorney General's office and through your Senate office, because sometimes you get very, very frustrated trying to deal with them, and you don't know what the right and the wrong is. So that's what this bill is. It's going to spell out exactly, what the benefits, the good, the bad, and the ugly is. Tell us what some of the changes are that you've proposed.
Sure. Yeah, one of the main pieces that we try to address with this bill, with this legislation, is around the lemon aid law, right? Which people are familiar with the lemon law as it relates to new cars, purchasing new cars. The lemon aid law, which people refer to it as that when it relates to used cars. There is an interesting piece of that statute which says that any consumer that goes out and buys a used car, essentially they have 7 days to get their car inspected, get the state inspection. And if it fails an inspection for safety or use of the vehicle, then they can bring that car back to the dealer where they bought it within those 7 days, and they have to be refunded, right? That's what the lemon law is. If you purchase a car that you cannot get an inspection sticker on in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, then they have to refund you your money. But the interesting little piece of this, and it's something that was never on my radar screen until we started looking at the complaints that came into the AG's office, was that the law says that it's 7 days from the date of purchase. So in effect, what happens is if I go out and I sign a purchase and sale on a used car today, that starts the clock for that 7 days. Oftentimes, they don't take delivery of that car right away, right? It's not always nefarious. Sometimes it's just they want to detail the car before they sell it. They want to stand by their product. There's certain things that they need to work on. But then, things happen, right? Maybe they're short-staffed. It goes 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days down the road. There are bad actors out there, unfortunately, that the Attorney General has had to deal with. They are the absolute minority in an industry that, there's a lot of folks trying to do the right thing. But there are times where you have some bad actors that hold on to a car for that 7 days, knowing that it's unlikely to pass a state inspection. The consumer then takes delivery of the vehicle. They go out, they fail the inspection, and then, by the way, you've already used your 7 days, and the dealership does not have to refund you under the lemon law. So that was an issue that has come up time and time again. So we said, well, we can change the law. We'll just take it from 7 days from the purchase of the vehicle and we'll move that to 7 days after delivery. So, you know, that starts the clock again. The consumer has to go out and make sure that they get their inspection, but it just gives them time in case the car is still held up at the dealer. So that was kind of, you know, that was the main piece of it. And we've had conversations with dealers and others, and you know, there's not a lot of opposition to that, because I think it makes sense in a lot of people's eyes.
Well, one of the things that was brought up to me when I was talking to some folks that I was going to have you on the show today, and somebody advised never let the dealer put the inspection sticker on for you. This is a perfect example. If they would have put a running sticker on,
Right.
and you drive away, the next time, you know, it's time for an inspection sticker, you won't be able to pass, and you have no leg to stand on if they provide that. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
I think that's a great bit of advice. You know, take it to another independent shop to get that inspection. And you know, I think a lot, and you've seen the changes in the industry over the years, especially when it comes to safety inspections. The Commonwealth has really tried to crack down on some of those unscrupulous, you know, shops that were just throwing stickers on. There's cameras in the shops now. They make sure that whoever's doing the inspection, you know, is going through the entire vehicle, that they're not just passing things that shouldn't be passed. A lot of that is you know, it's all online now. Everything has to be scanned. So I think that, you know, the Commonwealth and the inspection stations have done a good job in kind of weeding out some of those problems in the last few years. But it's a great bit of advice. I mean, you know, if you're purchasing a vehicle, you want to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for, and ultimately that you're able to use that vehicle on the road. And if it fails a state inspection and you don't know that those issues exist, you know, you're stuck. And Jack, the big thing is, when we were talking about this bill, and you know, I can get into the other pieces of it as well. But we just, you know, we looked at who are the consumers that are out there purchasing used vehicles, and what does it mean to them? And you know, we've heard from people that were testifying on this bill, people that have reached out to my office once they found out we filed this bill. You know, this is a huge purchase. I mean, other than going and buying a house, when somebody goes and purchases a vehicle, right, you know, they're saving their money. They're you know, many times they're skimping just to get to that point where they can purchase this vehicle so that they can, you know, take the kids to school and get to work and go to the doctor's office and go grocery shopping and do all the things that, you know, a family has to do. This is not an easy purchase for a lot of people to make. And when you hear the heartbreaking stories of folks that, you know, they save, they finally get this vehicle, they use it to get to work, and then all of a sudden it fails an inspection, or it's not usable, you know, that can cause financial ruin in many cases.
Yeah, they can cost somebody their job,
Yep.
you know, if you can't get back and forth to work. Now, I was reading through some of the stuff that your staff sent. And by the way, your staff is great to work with.
Thank you. Yes.
You know, Keith, Maya, Bill, every time they respond right away. I truly appreciate it. But there's an additional thing on this lemonade law that has to do with leases.
Yeah.
Tell us what that change is.
Yeah. So this was something that I wasn't aware of. You know, when you go and purchase and finance a vehicle, so, you know, I bought a new Grand Cherokee just this past year, and you know, went into the office and financed it, and you know, go through the credit union of the bank that we're using. You know, there's an agreement, and that agreement is that, you know, I pay every month on a certain day in a certain amount, and if I fail to do that, then I'll be notified. You know, whether it was through just you know, an error, or you know, it didn't clear the bank, or I forgot to pay make the payment. You're notified. The bank will notify you and say, look, you know, you're 2 weeks in arrears here. You're one payment in arrears. You have to pay this. And if you don't pay it, then we're going to repossess the vehicle. So that is when you finance a vehicle. When you lease a vehicle, there is no such agreement that they will notify you if you haven't made a payment. In many times they don't, right? They're not compelled to, so that they don't, but yet they can repossess your vehicle without giving you a right to cure, a right to make those payments, or even notification. We had found out that there were a few consumers just through an administrative error, and I'm telling you, it happens more than you even realize. You know, somebody will make a payment, it doesn't get connected to the right department, they don't know. Right. That person will go on thinking that they've made their lease payments and that there's no issues. All of a sudden they'll come out and the car will be gone, and turns out it was towed and repoed. That happened. We saw on, I think it was WCVB did a story on a woman who she made her payments, and it just didn't, it wasn't recorded correctly through the financing company, and she came on, I think she was hiking or something. She came out and her car was gone. So all we're doing is we're saying, look, if you do this for when you purchase a vehicle, we should do the same when you lease a vehicle, which is notify people, notify them. You missed a payment. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. You are in jeopardy of your car being repossessed. So it's just a notification to let people know that they have the right to, to make those payments, to catch up on those payments. And trust me, I've heard from people who said, Feeney, listen, if somebody's not paying their payments, then their car should be repossessed. This does not address that. This doesn't say that they cannot repossess your vehicle. All it says is same thing that would happen to me, who's making payments after purchasing a vehicle. If you lease a vehicle, they'll notify you. That's all.
Well, it seems like, you're making these very valuable tweaks to this bill that's been in place for a little while. And, little things like that lease part, your average consumer would not know that because I'm sure I lease a vehicle myself. And that certainly wasn't explained at the time. I don't intend to have it repossessed, or I hope not.
Right.
But what is there any other major parts of this bill that we need to talk about?
Sure. Yeah. So those are really the two kind of main points that we talked about. The lemon aid law and making sure that 7 days post delivery as opposed to 7 days post purchase, taking care of that lease, and repossession and notification right to cure issue. But there are also a couple other things to just kind of modernize and bring our statutes up to date. One of them is a surety bond. So, I'm sure being in the business and talking with folks that are in the business, these used car dealers, anybody that is licensed to sell used cars in Massachusetts has to have a surety bond, so that if any consumer needed to file a claim, that they would have, they would be backed up. The current statute says that it has to be a $25,000 value surety bond for the dealer. We're just increasing it to $50,000. And the idea behind that is cars are so much more expensive these days. There are a lot more to repair. There are a lot more to purchase. That hasn't been touched in many, many years. So we'll move it up to $50,000 to ensure that there's, that there's adequate recourse there for the consumers. A little bit controversial. We spoke with the Used Car Dealers Association in the last few days to kind of talk this out with them and, figure out if we can come to a consensus and, get to a better place on this bill. It's expensive, right? Anybody that's in business knows that these bonds and any type of insurance is expensive. And we certainly don't want to adversely affect, a business that, especially after the last few years, that is operating on really, really tight margins, and mandate that they go and do something that's going to put them out of business. That is certainly not our intent. We don't want to get there. But what we do want to make sure is that in this, time of escalating costs, and again, vehicle prices have gone up, repairs have gone up. We just want to make sure that there's an adequate recourse there for the consumer. So we increased that, and then we took a look at the warranty mileage, and there's some confusion around this piece. And we've been meeting regularly with stakeholders on this to just make sure that everybody understands what we're doing. Current state law gives a warranty in the law for any used car purchase. So if you go buy a used car today, there's a warranty for a certain amount of time, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Understanding that we're not going to make a used car dealer warranty something, that the manufacturer won't even warranty, right, for sure, many years and miles. Again, not our intent. But what we did do is kind of look at it and say, okay, cars last a lot longer these days. We know that. We've spoken with people in this industry who have given us very concrete data and evidence that shows how much longer cars will last. And it used to be, if you had 100,000 miles on your vehicle, you may as well, leave it outside and hope it gets torched at night, right? Now they're going to 200,000 plus, and that's normal. So what we did is we looked at the warranty law and we said, okay, right now it says up to 125,000 miles, I believe. It is warranted, or maybe up to 100,000. Yeah, I'm sorry, 125,000 is the current law. So we're just going to move that up to 200,000. Now that doesn't mean that if you go buy a used car, you're covered up to 200,000 miles on the dealer's back. What it does say, though, is that it gives you an amount of time. I think in the case of 200,000 miles, it'll be 30 days. So that the used car dealer, you purchased that, you are warranted for that vehicle for 30 days. That's all that is. And then we tear it down and we just increase the mileage limit on each of those tiers. So that gives a little bit more protection for the consumer who may be going out buying a high mileage vehicle, or even, you know, a used vehicle with a little bit lower mileage, but it gives them a period of time, whether it's 30 days or 60 days, that if the car is not usable, that they are warranted from the dealer. And this is one of those issues too, Jack. And you know, I think you know my approach by now. And you know, I don't want to legislate just for the sake of legislating. If we have issues that we need to address, which we certainly do here, we can be smart about it. We can write a bill, but then that's not the final step in the process. There's no pride of authorship here. We have to work with all the stakeholders to figure out what the best approach is. And there's sometimes where, you know, we hear from folks in certain sectors or industries, and we're just not going to get to an agreement. I've always found that taking the approach of you know, drafting a bill, starting the discussion, trying to solve for very specific, discrete issues, and then meeting with you know, people in the industry to say, okay, how can we address this you know, these issues without passing that tipping point where it's going to adversely affect your business, right? And that's what we're doing with this. So you know, where we are now, bill was filed. We had a great hearing. I testified in front of the joint committee that was the Joint Committee of Transportation that was considering this bill. Today's actually a big day in the legislature. We call it Joint Rule 10 Day, just a fancy term for basically the deadline day where bills have to come out of committee, either with a favorable report or a not favorable report. Sometimes they're sent to study, which essentially means they're killed until next year. So we've been advocating pretty aggressively on this bill to come out favorably. I have a good indication that I think it's going to come out favorably. Of course, anything in the few hours here before the deadline. But you know, as this is happening, if we do get a bill favorably out of the committee, then it moves to the next step in the process. It'll come back to the Senate, and it'll go either to Ways and Means or another steering committee. But that's when we have these discussions. And like I said, I met with the used car dealers in the past few days. We've been meeting consistently with the Consumer Protection Division at the Attorney General's office. And we've been hearing from folks in the district and constituents and people all across the Commonwealth. Those discussions will continue. We'll get the bill to a good place, hopefully, before the end of this session. And, you know, I will get up and clearly articulate in the Senate chamber why this is so important, and hope that we get the support for it.
Well, Paul, thank you very much. Senator Feeney, you're always a great guest when I bring you on the show. Very informative, very honest and open, which we truly appreciate. Thanks for taking the time today, for coming on. Again, thanks to your staff for all the support that we've had in the past few days to get this going. And if there's anything that we can do for you, you know how to get a hold of me, Paul.
You're the best. And you can find me 24/7. You know that, Jack. And I appreciate all the work that you do and the chamber does. I know it hasn't been an easy couple of years. So keep up the good work, keep the faith. And thank you to David and everybody over at AACS as well for always putting this together and hosting us. It's been a pleasure to join you again.
Awesome. Senator Feeney, thank you. Have a great rest of the week. Folks, thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you again next week. Again, big shout out to Dave Angel as our producer over at AACS and the whole crew at AACS who helps us put on this every week, and all the other programs that they support us here at the Chamber. So folks, thank you. Hope everybody's safe.
I like left the studio instead of stopping the stream. That was weird.
Okay.
Podcast.